Hello everyone, got 10 political jokes for you today. So a politician, an oil baron, and their pilot crash in the middle of the ocean. They eventually end up on an island, and the three decide to split up and meet back at the beach at sunset. When they meet back up, the politician returned with 4 fish. The oil baron found what he needed to build an open fire, and the pilot found a mysteriously sealed bottle. With each man getting their 1 fish, the politician was going to grab the last fish when the oil baron slapped his hand. They got into an argument, with the politician believing since he spent all day catching fish, he deserved his extra. The oil baron disagreed and said that he supplied the material needed to cook the fish and so it should be his. The conflict escalated, and as they were about to start a fist fight, the pilot sat back and was nervously rubbing his bottle. All of a sudden, the bottle's cork flew off, and a huge green genie appeared in front of them. Muscular arms crossed in front of him. "You have freed me, weary traveler." He booms at the pilot. "I was dropped in the middle of the ocean centuries ago, and now, to thank you, I shall give you 3 wishes. As is custom, the pilot stopped the genie and asked if instead of giving him 3 wishes, if he could give each of them 1, with which the genie generously agreed. The pilot has thought about this before, and he was going to say his wish, but out of fury, the politician pointed at the oil baron and spit out, "I wish all greedy people like him would disappear." The genie laughed and was going to grant the wish, until the oil baron said, "Well, I wish all power-hungry people like him disappear." The genie looked concerned and so asked the pilot for his wish. Thinking for a few minutes, the pilot then tells the genie, "I'd like my plane fixed, good as new." All 3 look at the pilot, confused by his modest wish. "You can ask for anything. Why would you only wish for that?" says an astonished politician. "Well, I was going to wish for world peace," said the pilot, "but you do seem to have taken care of that." So in a dark and quiet city street, a mugger wearing a ski mask appeared out of nowhere and jumped into the path of a well-dressed man who was strolling along, minding his own business. The mugger held a gun in his hand and pressed it against the man's ribs. "Give me your money," the mugger growled in a menacing voice, "or else." The well-dressed man, who was quite indignant at the sudden attack, was not about to give in so easily. He looked the mugger square in the eye and said firmly, "You can't do this, I'm a U.S. congressman." The mugger was taken aback. He had not expected this kind of resistance from his intended victim. He hesitated for a moment, then replied, "In that case," he said, with a sly grin on his face, "give me my money." So the president and his driver were cruising along a country road one evening when a pig ran in front of the car. The driver tried to avoid it but couldn't. The pig was killed. The president told his driver to go up to the farmhouse and explain to the owners what happened. About an hour later, the driver staggers back to the car with his clothes in total disarray. He was holding a bottle of wine in one hand, a cigar in the other, and smiling happily. "What happened?" asked the president. "Well," the driver replied, "the farmer gave me the wine, his wife gave me the cigar, and their beautiful daughter made mad passionate love to me." "My God, what did you tell them?" asked the president. The driver replied, "I'm the president's driver, and I just killed the pig." So one day, the president was feeling a bit under the weather and decided to go see his doctor to get a checkup. He was particularly concerned about a recent headache and wanted to make sure everything was okay. During the checkup, the doctor performed a brain scan on him and then sat down to deliver the results. "Mr. President," the doctor began with a serious look on his face, "I have some bad news for you." President's heart skipped a beat as he prepared himself for the worst. "What is it, doctor?" he asked, Well, the doctor continued, we have discovered that your brain has two sides, the left side and the right side. President was taken aback by this. He had never heard of such a thing before. Well, that's normal, isn't it? I thought everybody had two sides to their brain, he asked, trying to make sense of the news. The doctor shook his head. That's true, Mr. President. But your brain is very unusual because on the left side there isn't anything right, while on the right side there isn't anything left. So a government employee sat in his office and out of boredom decided to see what was inside his old filing cabinet. He poked through the contents and came across an old brass lamp. This will look good on my mantle, he said, and took it home with him. While polishing the lamp, a genie appeared and, as usual, granted him 3 wishes. I would like an ice-cold Coke right now. He gets his Coke and drinks it. Now that he can think more clearly, he states his second wish. I wish to be on an island with beautiful women who find me irresistible. Suddenly, he's on an island with gorgeous women eyeing him lustfully. He tells the genie his third and last wish. I wish I'd never have to work again. Instantly, he was back in his government office. So it was a slow day in heaven. So St. Peter decided to show a new guy around. St. Peter shows him all of the sights, the golf course, library, observation deck, cafeteria, and a huge room full of clocks. What's up with those clocks, Peter? Everyone on Earth has a clock that shows how much time he has left. When a clock runs out of time, the person dies and comes to the gates to be judged. The guy notices that some of the clocks are going faster than others. St. Peter tells him that every time a living person tells a lie, it speeds up his clock. The guy notices one clock in the center of the ceiling with both hands whirling around at an unbelievable rate. What's the story with that clock? Oh, that, St. Peter replies. That's George W. Bush's clock. We decided to use it as a fan. So an American politician and a Russian politician are having dinner. They are eating at the American politician's house in suburban Virginia, a 6-bedroom house with a 2 Mercedes-Benz at the front and a 500-square-foot garden. The Russian politician remarked how nice his house was and how he was able to afford it. The American politician said, "See that highway over there? It was meant to have 4 lanes instead of 3. A few months later, the Russian politician invited the American over to his house outside Moscow. When the American arrived, he saw the Russian had a 30-bedroom mansion with a massive garden with bodyguards and a Lamborghini, a Porsche, and a few Mercedes SUVs at the front. Later, when the American and the Russian were having the finest grilled lamb steak along with freshly caught sturgeon and the finest Russian black caviar, the American asked, "How could you afford all of this?" To which the Russian replied, "See that bridge there?" Confused, the American said, "What bridge?" "Exactly," the Russian said. So high-ranking politicians visit a school. The top one goes over the expenses and decides to make adjustments to cut costs. The lunch portions are too big. Cut them in half. Internet connection too fast. Too many computers. After that, they go to a preschool. Again, the expenses are too great. The lunch portions are too big. Reduce them to half. Too many toys around. After the preschool, they go to a prison. The lunch portions are too small and the selection is too limited. Get faster broadband and more comfortable beds. TVs are too old. Get a few consoles as well. One of them asks the leader, baffled, "Are you mad? We just cut costs in schools and preschools, and now you do this. My friend, we will never go to school or preschool again, but we can still easily end up here." So a bus filled with politicians were driving down a country road when all of a sudden, the bus ran off the road and crashed into a tree in an old farmer's field. The old farmer, after seeing what had happened, went over to investigate. He then dug a hole and buried the politicians. A few days later, the local sheriff came out, saw the crashed bus, and asked the old farmer where all the politicians had gone. The old farmer said he had buried them. The sheriff asked the old farmer, were they all dead? The old farmer replied, well, some of them said they weren't, but you know how them politicians lie. So a tourist wanders into a back alley antique shop in San Francisco's Chinatown. Picking through the objects on display, he discovers a detailed, life-sized bronze sculpture of a rat. The sculpture is so interesting and unique that he picks it up and asks the shop owner what it costs. $12 for the rat, sir, says the shop owner, and $1,000 more for the story behind it. You can keep the story, old man, he replies, but I'll take the rat. The transaction complete. The tourist leaves the store with the bronze rat under his arm. As he crosses the street in front of the store, two live rats emerge from a sewer drain and fall into step behind him. Nervously looking over his shoulder, he begins to walk faster, but every time he passes another sewer drain, more rats come out and follow him. By the time he's walked 2 blocks, at least 100 rats are at his heels, and people begin to point and shout. He walks even faster and soon breaks into a trot as multitudes of rats swarm from sewers, basements, vacant lots, and abandoned cars. Rats by the thousands are at his heels, and as he sees the waterfront at the bottom of the hill, he panics and starts to run full tilt. No matter how fast he runs, the rats keep up, squealing hideously. Now not just thousands but millions, so that by the time he comes rushing up to the water's edge, a trail of rats 12 city blocks long is behind him. Making a mighty leap, he jumps up onto a light post, grasping it with one arm while he hurls the bronze rat into San Francisco Bay with the other, as far as he can heave it. Pulling his legs up and clinging to the light post, he watches in amazement as the seething tide of rats surges over the breakwater into the sea, where they drown. Shaken and mumbling, he makes his way back to the antique shop. "Ah, so you've come back for the story," says the owner. "No," says the tourist, "I was wondering if you have a bronze politician."